Emma, welcome back. How are we?
I'm very good. Thank you. This is, yeah, round two for us.
Around two, 3.5 years, and a couple of we were trying to get this done a while, but we
We have,
haven't. But
yes.
no, it's we were chatting off air about the world, so trying to solve the world's problems. Hasn't gone too well.
No,
Um,
it's going to take a
so
bit longer than 10 minutes, unfortunately.
exactly. So massive congratulations on the brand new book, The Fibre Effect. So how have things been going since the book and has come out?
Okay, yeah. So last time I was here, I was talking to you about the 30-gram plan,
Yep.
which came out last May. Um, and it went stratospheric. We've just been talking about it. Yeah. Like there was just something about it that people really loved. And so it kind of almost sold itself in a way. So yeah, that went exceptionally well. And then I guess what has happened is protein has got a lot of the spotlight, hasn't it? But I'd say 2025 was the year of protein, and so my next kind of I don't know the place that I wanted to naturally go next was fiber. So in the 30-gram plan, I talk about 30 grams of protein per meal, there or thereabouts, 30 grams of fiber a day, and 30 different plants a week. And so, having seen, the fact that protein was getting all of the headlines, I then felt that really fiber wasn't getting the love that it deserved. And I'm probably like I don't really believe in superfoods and things like that. But if there's one nutrient that I think really does deserve a kind of superstar status, it is fiber. And so, hence, this book just really hones in on, the benefits of fiber and the effects that we feel throughout our bodies and lives. So yeah, that's it. And but we were sort of talking off air, weren't we, about the fact that fiber isn't seen as a very sexy topic, and so it's a much harder sell. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah. And do you find that there's, because I think for an awful long time we've been told that eat your fruit and veggies and all this kind of stuff, but now you've got people coming out saying the other thing of the sugar in fruit or vegetables and fiber maxing and all these kind of different things. So how can you fight that noise, or how can you filter out that noise if you're kind of someone? I think there's research saying that like I think 70 or 80% of people are now taking their nutritional information from social media rather than from actual people. Um, so
Sensible people,
how can
qualified
we,
people.
yeah, AI people. How can we filter that out, or how can we filter through that noise?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much scaremongering, isn't there? And we know that those kind of clickbaity scaremongering headlines travel a lot faster than the sensible stuff, which is probably why I am finding the selling of fiber a lot harder. But yeah, there's lots of people talking about lectins and oxalates, isn't there? And phytates, and vegetables are trying to kill you. Uh, the honest answer, Shane, is it's quite dispiriting at times, and I feel like I'm kind of shouting into the ether, and sometimes, it's not really, my voice isn't being heard, because a lot of that nonsense is much, the voices are much louder, I guess. But we just have to kind of keep trying, I think, and hope that sense will prevail in a way. Um, but I think there is also this kind of push for the next thing, the next trend, the next supplement. We're seeing lots of peptides, aren't we? Not just GLP-1s, which obviously have a place, but we're seeing all of these kind of unsubstantiated supplements and infusions and things like that, injections. And I think, sadly, that is kind of where people want to go. They want to pay a lot of money because they think that when they're shelling out, somehow they're going to get better results. But we know that, 2/3 of the UK aren't even eating their 5 a day. So we've got to really just hammer home this thing of getting back to basics and doing those foundations, consistently. It's boring, isn't it?
It
But
is, and I think it is. It's not sexy enough because I know in the 30 gram plan you introduce the idea of hitting 30 grams a day, and then the fiber effects job is to kind of build on top of that. Why is the 30 gram number that people talk about? Why is that the magic number? And I don't want to bring genders into it, but do women need more than men, or do men need more than women in relation to fiber, or is it just eat more vegetables to everyone?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So it's built on science, right? So everything that I do, basically I translate the science into meals that people want to eat. I like to make things really actionable and doable. But yeah, the 30 grams comes from government guidelines from SACN. It is, the number that has been shown to have the kind of health benefits, but it doesn't stop at 30. So I think a lot of people think, oh, I am already eating, pretty well. I'm probably getting my 30 grams of fiber. I'd say you're probably not, because 96% of the UK aren't reaching that 30-gram target. But even if you are, it's not like the benefits kind of top out at 30. The more fiber you're eating, the benefits kind of continue. And so, which is good. It means, there's plenty of room for improvement for everybody. But to answer your question about men and women, women seem to be, sadly, even worse than men. So 96% of us aren't reaching that target, like I said. And yeah, it seems like women seem to be worse than men. And I think probably that is because fiber equals carbohydrates. And, we have kind of had it drummed into us that carbs are bad and that they will increase weight. So I think that's possibly the link. I also think that women tend to suffer more from digestive problems, so more, bloating, particularly for midlife women like me and onwards, kind of post menopause. We know that women tend to suffer more from things like constipation and kind of just that sluggish digestion. And so I think a lot of people are like, when I eat beans or broccoli or these kind of high fiber foods, I really struggle. Therefore, I can't eat fiber. And actually, the opposite is true. And I go into this in the book. It's more often about kind of starting slow, going, low and slow, and really kind of building up gradually, because your gut is almost like a muscle, and you've got to really kind of train it. We can't be going from 15, 16 grams of what, which is the average consumption in the UK at the moment, to 30 overnight. Your gut is going to kind of put up a bit of a fight.
And I think and that's a really, really good point in relation to that whole thing of that transition from zero to hero in relation to fire. Because I've seen both kind of responses of constipation versus the laxative effect, and they're kind of wondering, well, I thought vegetables were good for me. Why am I now on the toilet, or why am I completely and utterly blocked up? It's kind of like it's trying to find the balance that will work for you and slowly build up. As we said, this isn't sexy in any shape or form. But in relation to the hormonal impact, particularly around kind of like the cycle and kind of going into that next stage of perimenopause, why is that fiber effect so important for overall hormone health? Because I think that's
Yes.
downplayed or not spoken about a huge
It's
amount.
not, is it? Yeah, so we know that fiber feeds your gut microbes. I think that everybody, will know about the gut microbiome. And fiber is your gut microbe's favorite food. But within these kind of 40, there's these conflicting numbers, 40 trillion, maybe 100 trillion different microbes. There is what we call the estrobolome. And the estrobolome actually, we think, has some kind of influence over how you metabolize your hormones. So it's emerging research, but essentially, and we can't really say eat this and you will have this incredible estrobolome. But what we do know is that the more fiber that you are giving these gut microbes, the more diverse they are, the more robust they are, and then they kind of have these knock-on benefits, which is, it might be to do with skin health, it might be mood, it might be hormone production, but also just the physical bulk that fiber provides actually helps to push out, to excrete any kind of excess hormones. And I've been talking about this a lot actually on other podcasts, things like microplastics, so and cholesterol too. It's that same kind of mechanism whereby it almost acts like a sponge, particularly soluble fiber, because it's kind of acts like a gel almost. So it absorbs these things that aren't particularly good for us all. With hormones, once we've kind of used them, we then want to excrete them so that they don't get recirculated, and it helps to kind of push it all out in a nice big poo.
Okay. Poos are great.
Poos are
Um,
brilliant. We don't talk about poo enough.
I know. Uh, you mentioned there about kind of like you alluded to diet culture. And I think it was definitely very prevalent in 90s and 2000s with the Kate Moss thing of nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Or Bridget Jones's diary when I think she was like 69 kg and was classified as, or was told that she was overweight on the movie or whatever it was. So you have this approach of addition rather than restriction in the book. How do you find people respond to that whole method of adding things in rather than restricting when you actually approach the topic with them?
Yeah, it's such a good question because literally just yesterday I had a DM saying, please could you, this was on Instagram, please could you stop, please could you make lower calorie breakfast because 450 calories for breakfast is just too much for me because I'm trying to lose weight. And my response was, as you can imagine, very polite, but it was like, you know, 450 is, that's just a decent sized breakfast. When you couple that, you know, if we're talking about calorie deficits, I usually most meals are for the average woman are around 500 calories. So that's 1,500 calories a day. That's a decent deficit. You could actually eat more than that and still be, you know, 300 in a good kind of 300 calorie deficit. And so I think there's this real kind of people don't understand weight loss. Still, they confuse it. They kind of overcomplicate it. My premise, my kind of philosophy is to go in big, but 3 times a day. So 3 big, robust, super filling meals, and they are protein and fiber rich. And that will help to physically fill you up. It will help to reduce, therefore, cravings and the need to kind of snack and graze. And instantly, without doing anything, without feeling kind of very deprived, uh, you know, or kind of overly thinking, kind of overly complicating things, you are in a kind of natural calorie deficit, you know, but you're still feeling good. You're still feeling satiated because there is nothing worse than feeling really deprived and kind of white knuckling your way through some bonkers 2 week bikini blast, for example.
You mentioned there about people overcomplicate fat loss. What do you mean when I agree with you completely, by the way. What way do you feel they overcomplicate it?
Well, they're always looking for the next new thing, you know, the next detox or the next protocol or the next supplement. And it still comes down to people just don't want to hear this, but it still comes down to being in a calorie deficit, but just you know, a sustainable one, and making sure that those calories count, that they are nutrient rich, but still you have to be eating less than you are consuming in order to lose weight. People just can't seem to get their heads around that, or they're, you know, they're trying to come up with I don't know, it's down to marketing basically, isn't it? Trying to make out that they've got this brand new approach that nobody else, this kind of new secret thing that nobody else understands and nobody else can give them. um, but yeah, you've got to sign up to this program or buy this protocol.
Yeah, they kind of, the way the marketing seems to have, I don't know if it's changed, but it's definitely got more elaborate in relation to it. Just kind of seems to target a lot more shame tactics in the marketing and kind of like makes out that the people are the problem rather than
Mm,
the actual habits and behaviors and all that kind of stuff are really are what's at play. And I think there's also the other element of it is the weighing scales is to kind of a lot of people think that going down as quick as possible is going to fix all the other annoyances in their life, whether their partner's a dick or their kids will shit themselves because of too much fiber, or that there's other noise out there thinking that the scale is going to fix all of the problems when body image or trauma or grief, all these kind of unsexy things that nobody actually wants to deal with.
yeah,
But
it's hard work, isn't it? You've got to put the work in, like you say, on lots of different angles.
yeah, and like one of my clients said it to me, it was kind of like the work that you actually, the bit that you have to lose is the mental weight, and that will, as a byproduct, will kick in the physical weight where you kind of want to go. Um, in relation to the whole thing about kind of like protein having been that big, huge cultural movement that's happened, I didn't realize this until last week that now there's protein water in the shops.
Mm,
That's how
yeah.
oblivious I am to the world. Do you think the fiber thing is going to be the next one, or is it too unsexy in relation to it, or is it, or why do you think it's taken so long for this to kind of? It was beaten into us as kids, like eat your greens and eat your veggies and eat your fruit. But why is it taking so long to kind of come back into the mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, there was the F plan diet. My mum was on it when I was a kid. I can remember that. That was basically a fiber diet. I think it is already happening. We are already getting Coke with inulin in it. We're getting fiber drinks, so it's already happening. Um, will it be on that same scale as protein popcorn? Yeah, who knows? We are yet to see. There's also kind of a real push for lots of fiber supplements. And I like protein. I think protein powder, there is a definite kind of argument for them. But I think as with protein powder, it's not something that you want people to kind of rely on heavily, because then it displaces all the kind of the goodness that you're getting from food. But yeah, I think people are often looking for the next big thing, aren't they? And actually, if it was fiber, and we were just talking, off air about fiber maxing and how that's become this kind of TikTok trend, actually, that is something I can get behind, because we know that increasing fiber has all these incredible knock-on benefits. It reduces the risk of heart disease, of certain cancers, of type 2 diabetes. It feeds your gut microbes. It helps you to poo better. It stops constipation. It helps with cravings and blood pressure, cholesterol. It manages your appetite. It ticks so many boxes that if it was going to be this thing that everyone's doing and talking about and getting on board with, I would be absolutely delighted. But yeah, preferably not from fiber added into things like Coke.
That sounds disgusting, to be honest with you.
It started in the States and it will come over here, right? Because we're always sort of hopping on
We're a
their
few years behind.
coattails.
Yeah, exactly. Um, the next thing is one of the topics that's definitely coming out in the media. I know it's in the UK Parliament at the minute in relation to kind of eating disorders and kind of the food poverty side of things in relation to the meals. I know during COVID, I think it was Marcus Rashford, campaigned heavily and kind of changed the kind of like the meals for those who are maybe less well off. When we're talking about kind of increasing the fiber side of things and making it more accessible for people and making it more affordable for people, it's 100% cheaper to not have it in your life.
Mm.
But are there higher fiber foods genuinely affordable for people who maybe have a little bit of a tighter budget? And what are their options that they can kind of, the quick and easy options that they could include into their shopping list?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, fiber is much more accessible and much more budget friendly, I think, than protein. And in the book, I talk about my fiber heroes, and you will be delighted to know that none of them are exotic by any stretch. They are all available from, Aldi, Lidl, your average kind of shop at the end of your road. We're talking about things like oats, we're talking about chickpeas, cans of food. We're talking about frozen food. Probably the most exotic thing in there is chia seeds. And even chia seeds are pretty regularly available these days, but you can buy in bulk. And like I say, those budget supermarkets are now exceptionally good at stocking these kind of basics. And we are talking about basics here: pears, frozen berries, a pack of frozen peas. None of these are kind of crazy exotic ingredients by any stretch. And I think my number one, if I had to pick out a number one budget friendly fiber source, it would be beans. And you can pick up beans for pennies in Lidl. You can buy mixed beans, all these different types, and you can use them in so many brilliant ways. And I'm actually working with the Food Foundation, who want to double the UK's bean consumption by 2028 and one of the reasons that they want to do this is because of that food poverty. Because we know that at the moment only one most people in the UK are only eating one portion of beans a week, and they're incredibly filling. They're incredibly full of nutrients. So yeah, they really do, I think, tick a lot of boxes. And it's not just fiber; it's also protein. You know,
Yeah.
beans are wonderfully, wonderfully versatile.
And how would you navigate if someone has a young family and they're at that stage where they have the fussy eaters in relation to kind of encouraging kids, the next generation to kind of get on board with the vegetables? Because I know that's not an easy phase for any parent to kind of go through. Because I was the fussy eater as a kid, so God help my parents.
I know, me too, bizarrely. I have got a ton of recipes in here. So, even things like there's some real kind of unsung heroes. I think the kind of quiet superheroes, things like popcorn, really high in in fiber. I've got some really nice kind of bran cookies. I think that will appeal to kids, but you can also squeeze in a lot of fiber in terms of just blending into pasta sauces, for example. Kids don't need to know about that. And I think in terms of just like having your kind of your basics, so things like pasta, you can get whole wheat pasta, and I know that a lot of kids will turn their nose up. So sometimes with my kids, for example, I've got a 14-year-old, I will do half and half, and that usually kind of stops that fussing in its tracks. Have you got kids?
No, not that I know of.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I can see it I can see it with all the lads. Like I've got a 6-year-old godson, and I know that he wouldn't be the greatest at eating vegetables from what I hear from his parents. He would have a predisposition to the more higher palatable stuff, shall we say. So it's quite hard at dinner time to get him sit down to kind of eat the things. So I can see it, and they kind of you can see it with parents. You can hear it from clients all the time of kind of like, I have a fussy eater, I couldn't be arsed to cook the vegetables because it's just going to be wasted. Um,
Yeah, I think serving a big kind of steaming bowl of veg is never going to go down well with fussy, picky kids. But there is definitely ways to shoehorn them in. Like I say, blending or making things that they traditionally love. So whether that's a lasagna or a spag bol, something like that, you can add in some lentils and things like that. And I think they're kind of imperceptible, undetectable. But kids
yeah, I saw one
kids
of
kids are
the
good at this kind of stuff, right?
yeah, no, I saw one of the other guests. She has a product called the Fussy Food Plate,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's you kind of the kids are allowed to play with their food and kind of shape their food into whatever the designs on the plate, and you can kind of put the vegetables in. And they found that can kids just want to play with the food, particularly when they're really young. They just want to play it and get used to the textures and stuff like that. And it normally is a texture thing, and it's normally just trying
Yeah.
to push it
I
through.
I think as well, just not forcing too much on them because then I think it becomes a bit traumatic and then it really puts them off. Also, I think lots of choice. So even things with really young kids, lots of chopped up um, veg, so that there and plenty of hummus that they can kind of dip things into, and that they've got that kind of choice. I think that can help rather than being kind of forced certain things. But yeah,
Yeah,
my
it's
kids are a bit bigger, so I'm beyond that stage, thankfully.
around that stage. Yeah. If someone wanted to, because a lot of people are now using the apps, and now there's AI to now track your food, and even though it's not the greatest tool in the world.
Not very
Um,
accurate.
yeah. If someone was kind of looking at as a way to kind of identify the fiber content in their food that they're already buying, what could they or what kind of little stuff that can they look for on a label of a pack of food, and what actually numbers actually matter when they're kind of looking to kind of get the best bang for their buck?
Yeah, so I would say anything that is over 6 grams per 100 grams, particularly when you're talking about things like bread, that is deemed high fiber. So that's quite a nice, quick, easy way just to look on the back of pack and then work out if, yeah, what you're getting is actually high fiber or not. But going for the whole meal kind of versions of things where possible. So brown rice, brown bread, seeded bread, rye crackers, all of those kind of things are just nice, kind of quick, easy hacks.
And is there any one myth around fiber that you would get rid of?
That it is boring, brown, and it has to kind of involve bran. Although I'm actually quite a fan of bran. But yeah, hopefully from the book, people will get that fiber is incredibly diverse. It means eating the rainbow. You've got butter beans, you've got pomegranate seeds, you've got asparagus. It is rich and incredibly versatile and incredibly delicious.
You mentioned there about the recipes in the book and the comments to the DM that you got about the like that's too high a calories. Do you get those kind of comments an awful lot about
Um,
that the food should be lower?
I do. Not a lot, but there is definitely a kind of contingent that thinks that you have to really scrimp, particularly on breakfast for some reason. I think it's kind of hammered into
It's trying to
women.
save for the rest of the day.
Yeah. And actually, if you flip it on its head, if you have a proper filling breakfast, actually, you don't find yourself at 9 p.m., raiding the snack cupboard because
Yeah.
you
It's a
simply
lot
have,
of people try to bank just to kind of have their I hate the word treats because we're not dogs. But a lot of people will try to save their calories the whole day just
yeah.
to kind of and then try to white knuckle in the evenings and stuff. And that like that's it's not like it's not a their fault issue. It's just that the way that diet culture has people, unfortunately.
Well,
And
and we've also had this real thrust towards fasting and skipping breakfast.
yeah,
And so I think people think there's something wrong with eating breakfast, particularly a big breakfast. But actually, what we know is it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day.
yeah, you
It
kind of get
sorts your
momentum. Yeah,
blood sugar out for one thing, but yeah, it sets up your energy levels. I think it really helps with mood as well. And then if you're eating properly, particularly protein and fiber, but from the get go, and it doesn't have to be the minute you open your eyes, you then can really quite easily, I think, keep going for at least 4 hours till lunchtime. And then again, I think lunchtime is another potential kind of danger zone where often we're having a soup or some salad, and then we kind of leave it all until the end of the day. And then once you start eating, suddenly people can't put the brakes on because they're absolutely ravenous.
yeah. And when people talk about the soluble versus insoluble, what is the difference between the two? And have you got any examples that kind of fit into the two brackets? Because I think a lot of people kind of have heard the terms or may not have heard the terms, but when people are kind of talking about the ones that are going to be filling themselves up a little bit more, and ones that they can kind of get easily accessible, what are ultimately the differences?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we talk about fiber, but really we should be talking about fibers. So you're right. We tend to talk about soluble and insoluble, but there's actually hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of fiber. And I think this is the kind of research that will continue, will be emerging over the next. We've got a ton of kind of knowledge, I think, to uncover when it comes to things like this, particularly connected with gut health. But to answer your question, soluble is basically things that could be, if you mix it with water, it would break down and you could essentially push it through. Let's say if you had a sieve or a colander, you could push it through the holes of the sieve. So things like oats, for example. Insoluble is things like bran, things like the skins of fruit and vegetables. And that is what actually bulks up your poo and helps to kind of push it through. So the two work really brilliantly. But I think the confusion is some people are like, oh, well, that's soluble and that's insoluble, whereas actually most foods contain both. So, for example, if you're thinking of a bean, the inside is soluble, the outside is insoluble, and that's true of most foods actually. So, I think let's not over kind of complicate it. People don't need to worry about how much soluble or insoluble fiber, all the kind of ratios. Literally, just get that fiber on your plate in whatever guise it comes in. But there's also within those kind of two brackets, there's also resistant starch, which is acts as well a bit like a prebiotic. And prebiotic fiber, I don't want to kind of complicate it too much, but prebiotic fiber is essentially soluble fiber. It's the fibers that feed your gut microbes. And resistant starch is found in things like beans, in green bananas, particularly, and also things like starches that you have cooked and then cooled. So, for example, potatoes or pasta or bread. So, if you freeze your bread and then you put it in the toaster, you are increasing the resistant starch, and that in turn kind of feeds things like butyrate, which we know really can help to keep the gut lining really nice and kind of resilient.
I think that's really because I think sometimes when you hear people when you were talking about when you're saying about putting into the toaster, I was like, oh no, what's she going to say that someone's going to click onto? And like this is going to be negative. I was like, that's not the whole point of the podcast. So I'm glad it was a positive.
Oh yes, absolutely. God, let's not demonize bread. I've
No,
got
exactly.
loads of bread, really nice bread recipes in there, but your bog standard bread, let's not demonize it. My
No.
God, even white bread, it's like it's got folate in it and plenty of quite a lot of fiber, bizarrely. So I think we are all too quick to jump on the demonizing wagon, aren't we? But then just to follow up on the different types of fiber, there's also different, so things like people might have heard of things like pectin. So you will find that's a type of fiber that you often find in things like apples and pears. There's beta glucan, which people will know because it lowers your cholesterol potentially. So that's found in things like oats and barley. We have things like mucilage, so chia seeds I've talked about already, but those things that when you add water to them, they kind of gel up and they become kind of almost what's the word? Kind of gloopy. So things like okra, things like flax seeds, psyllium husk, all of these are different types of mucilage fibers. And yeah, like I say, we just want to get as much variety in as possible, which is why we're always banging on about eating the rainbow and trying to get those 30 different plants a week.
Is there any way to make it less complex? Because I know we were talking about earlier about how we overcomplicate things with food and nutrition. If there was one thing to simplify it for anyone, and particularly for the next generation, because they are bombarded with crap, what was the one thing that you would do to oversimplify the whole nutrition realm to someone?
Oh my God, I'll tell you what it would be, and it's got nothing to do with food. It would be go through your social media feed and unfollow all the people who are overcomplicating things. Get rid of them because all of that noise is just so confusing and kind of overcomplicated. And once you get rid of all of that, actually, start listening to qualified people who are talking sense, then it's much easier to just get those foundations right.
As a parent,
Would
are
you
you
agree?
worried for the next generation?
Sorry.
As a parent, are you worried for the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see. I've got two girls, 14 and 18, and there is a ton of, um, I guess, sort of, it's orthorexia, but also anorexia. Those types of, obsession with clean eating,
Yeah.
but also that obsession with being skinny. It's back, and the GLP-1s really, they're helpful for lots of people, but they're being misused, as we can see, at the BAFTAs and
I
uh,
saw the BAFTAs. Yeah, I was in
I mean, it's
Manchester at the. I was in Manchester during the BAFTAs, and it was all you're kind of seeing on the feed and stuff like that was the people who had maybe been on it.
yeah, it's
Kind of
quite
scary.
horrifying, isn't it?
It's kind of
And
scary.
you were saying about the 90s and Kate Moss and nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Well, it feels like we're kind of regressing and we're going back to that. And rather than this message of women need to take up space and be really strong and think about their bone health and building muscle, suddenly that all seems to be kind of getting lost, which is so sad.
And how do you protect well, one's an adult, a young adult, and one's a teenager. So how do you protect your two daughters
Yeah,
from? that kind of messaging?
It's really hard. The 18-year-old is now old enough that she has come to the conclusion that, she's quite sensible actually. The 14-year-old is much harder because I think she's much more vulnerable to those messages. So we talk about things, a lot without, what I don't want to do is to talk about healthy, overly, this kind of over emphasis on health foods necessarily. I let them eat whatever they want. So, I think some people are quite shocked that we've got loads of crisps and, we've got all sorts of foods in the house. Um, but in terms of social media, it is about trying as much as possible to minimize the amount of time that she spends on there. And also she knows that I can go onto her phone at any given time and see, her history and what she's looking at. But I mean, it is like herding cats. It's incredibly hard, and it is something that does worry me. Actually, I haven't really found a brilliant solution, if I'm being honest with you.
No, as a teenager, I don't know what I would I have listened.
No, I mean, I'm a nutritionist and I'm her mum. It's like she doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm the last.
you've got double whammy there.
Yeah, I'm the last person she wants to listen to.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it is kind of worrying because even when I'm out and about and stuff like that, you're having conversations, they hear you're a nutritionist, and they're like, I remember being at a wedding in Seville, not last year, the year before, and I don't drink either. And the first thing is like, what do you do? It's the one question that will make me exit the building mentally is, what do you do for a living? I find it gives me an ick. Uh, and I said what I do, and then they found out I didn't drink, and that was almost like, are you going to judge me now for having a pint?
Oh,
It's like it's it almost feels like you can't win when you're a nutritionist because you hear so many different things that people can say, and you kind of it's sometimes you hear people are saying, oh, sugar is bad, sugar is evil, or you've got like the seed oils or palm oils and stuff like that that people are demonizing. It is kind of scary that it's so prevalent.
well, everyone eats, and so everyone's got an opinion on food, haven't they? But yeah, when I try not to tell people what I do actually at that in that kind of scenario,
Yeah.
because you either get that or you get loads of questions about
Yeah. The
I've got
questions
this.
it's fun, not.
I'm really constipated. What can I do? And it's like, oh God, no,
I'm just gonna go
not
over
not now.
here. Yeah. So the last question is, if a listener was listening to this, what one idea from the fiber effect that they can do and act on this week, what would that be?
It would be to add in one vegetable, to buy one vegetable, put one vegetable that you don't usually buy or eat into your shopping trolley, just to try and start some diversity.
Good advice. Where can people get the book and where can people find your other books as well?
So everything is available online, the usual places. All we need to support our bookshops too, so you can order them through bookshops. And you can find me on Instagram at emma.bardwell. Lots of tips and tricks and recipes over there. Lots of no nonsense nutrition advice.
Emma, thank you so much for coming on again. We won't leave it another 3.5 years.
No, please let's not. Maybe I will have written another book by then and we can talk about
We'll
that.
see. Let's see if we'll make fiber sexy.
Yes, please. Yes,
Thank you
we
so
want a
much, Emma.
mission. Thank you.